Can planting trees really revive a nation? Sounds strange, doesn't it? But sometimes the greatest revolutions start with seeds, quite literally. America in the 1930s, when despair was on every face, when people were losing their jobs, their homes, even their dreams. The days of the Great Depression were like someone had thrown dust over the hearts of an entire nation. But then one man emerged, Franklin D. Roosevelt, a leader who said, "We will revive not just the economy, but humanity." And from that thought was born a program, the Civilian Conservation Corps, or CCC for short. And that's the story of today's video. An army that fought with shovels, not guns. Now imagine, it's 1933. America is beset by hunger, unemployment, and dust storms. Millions of young people are on the streets, jobless and hopeless. People were saying, nothing will change. Factories closed, fields were barren, and hearts were broken. During this period, the Dust Bowl disaster devastated everything. The land was parched, the trees were downed, and the air was filled with dust. It seemed as if nature itself had become angry with America. But on the one hand, there was devastation, and on the other, there was a dream of a new beginning, a dream in which both man and nature could be reconnected. Roosevelt knew that if the youth were not given hope, the nation's future would be lost. "We will give them tools, not weapons," he said. He had a plan in mind that would kill two birds with one stone, give jobs to the youth, and life to the land. That was the foundation of the CCC, a tree army that would revive the land instead of war. Roosevelt's goal was not just to provide jobs, but to build character through hard work, discipline, and service. He wanted America to reconnect with the land, with nature. On March 31st, 1933, an executive order was issued, establishing the Civilian Conservation Corps. Then came the moment that changed history. For the first time, a glimmer of hope appeared on the faces of the youth. "We'll plant trees," some said with a laugh, but soon this joke became the greatest pride of their lives. CCC campuses were built in forests, mountains, and riverbanks. The boys who had been starving until yesterday were now in uniform and becoming defenders of the country, defenders of the environment. Life in these camps was not easy. Waking up before the sun, hard physical labor, low pay, and limited rest. But despite it all, there was a strange peace on those young faces. They knew they were doing something big. "Mom, I'm planting a tree. Maybe tomorrow this tree will shade someone's house." These weren't just words. They were the beginning of a new way of thinking, of sacrifice and service. The scope of the CCC's work was astonishing. They planted millions of trees, built thousands of miles of roads, protected rivers from flooding, and enhanced the beauty of national parks. Parks like Yellowstone, Yosemite, and the Grand Canyon are as beautiful as they are today because of the hands of these boys. They weren't just changing the land, they were carving out the future. Every shovel, every plant was a sign of hope that America could breathe again. But yes, everything was not so ideal. Some criticized CCC. It's just a government policy. Some politicians said the government wanted to control the youth. But those who were in the camps knew the truth. For them, it wasn't just a job. It was a life-changing opportunity. An opportunity that gave them pride, self-confidence, and purpose. There was a story about a young man named James Carter. No, not the president, but an ordinary boy. He came from a poor area of Texas. He joined CCC, learned to plant trees, and for the first time, he woke up to a purpose. Years later, he would say, "I didn't just plant trees there, I grew myself." There were thousands of such stories. The program was not just enriching the land, but also the hearts. There was a strange brotherhood on campus. Race, color, background, everyone was forgotten. One uniform, one mission. Some white, some black, some Native American, all standing together. When you dig mountains with someone, the mystery disappears. It was this unity that later became the new spirit of America. Environmentally, the CCC performed a miracle. In just 9 years, 3 billion trees were planted. Think of it, 3 billion. Those trees are still in America's forests today. Soil erosion stopped, riverbanks were protected, and the land breathed again. They did what even the big companies of the modern era could not do. Balance with nature. But the greatest impact was on people. The CCC employed nearly 3 million young people. Many of them earned money for the first time, sent it home, and earned respect. Their hands were blistered, but their hearts were satisfied. They knew they were working not just for themselves, but for the entire nation. These camps taught a new generation discipline. The daily routine was rigorous. Wake up at 6 a.m., stand in line, eat, then work. But gradually, this rigor became a training. The boys who had been idle until yesterday became figures of discipline. They learned that hard work is not shameful, but proud. In the beginning, the CCC was only for men, but over time, women and minorities were also included. Although opportunities for them were few, some women still played their part through she camps. It was a small step, but it became the foundation of a social revolution. Roosevelt often said, "I am most proud of the CCC," and he was right. When the world was about to plunge into war, it had built an army that was a symbol of construction, not destruction. Former members of the CCC later joined World War II, but they had already learned discipline, leadership, and unity. Looking back today, the CCC is not just a government program. It is a philosophy. It proves that when man works with nature, both are saved. The roots of trees contain not only soil, but also the story of a nation. And perhaps today we need a new tree army, one that stands not for the land, but for humanity. As the CCC began to work at full speed, the map of the entire United States began to change. The barren hills where even grass had never grown were now greening up. The banks of rivers that had been being buried under the weight of soil for years now flowed cleanly. People were surprised, and these were the same boys who had been sleeping on the streets until yesterday. The same ones who were called the Lost Generation. Now they had become heroes of the nation. The newspapers dubbed them the Tree Army, and the public smelled hope for the first time. When these young men began sending their salaries home, a small check changed the lives of entire families. A smile returned to mothers' faces. Younger brothers were sent back to school, and the silence at the dinner table was replaced by gratitude. Sometimes those few dollars weren't just money. They were a sense of pride that their sons were working for their country. In American villages, people would proudly say, "Our boy is in the CCC too." The CCC taught not only physical labor but also knowledge. These camps held classes, reading, writing, learning skills, even the fine arts. Many young men who had dropped out of school completed their education there. "This is a university among the trees," said one officer. People graduated as carpenters, mechanics, surveyors. Some later took government jobs. Some opened their own companies. In fact, the CCC not only enriched the land, but also the mines. If you look at the photos from that era, the difference is incredible. Barren hills became lush forests. Where dust once swirled in the air, birdsong filled the air. "If it weren't for the CCC," said one environmentalist, "America would probably be a desert today. Just think, millions of trees, hundreds of parks, and millions of acres of land restored. An entire nation reclaimed its environment with its own hands. This wasn't just natural restoration. It was collective repentance, repairing the broken relationship between man and nature." But like every revolution, the CCC was criticized. Some said it was a form of socialism. Some complained that the pay was low. And some worried that the government was subjecting young people to military discipline. But Roosevelt was determined. "I will defend this program not by argument alone, but by results," he said. And the results spoke for themselves. Millions of young people said, "We have earned our honor with our own hands." Sometimes, the greatest evidence of success is the quiet satisfaction written on people's faces. The truth is that not all aspects of the CCC were ideal. Racial discrimination also loomed large. African Americans were segregated with few opportunities, but they turned those limited opportunities into strength. Some planted forests in their communities. Others earned respect through their hard work. "We fought on two fronts," one black activist later wrote. "We fought on two fronts, against poverty and against prejudice." Perhaps that was the true beauty of the CCC. It gave everyone a chance to change, no matter how difficult the path. Campus life was full of humor, mischief, and mischief. Some boys would throw water at each other. Some nights they would play guitar and sing. Every Sunday there would be a kind of small fair. In those moments, poverty and suffering would be forgotten. They would laugh, run, and dream of the future. Some would say, when I go back, I will plant trees on my land. Some had a dream. I will become a teacher. For the first time, there was light in their eyes, the light that comes only through hard work. Today's historians count the CCC among the most successful social experiments of the 20th century. One historian writes, "It was the program that restored trust between government, the people, and nature." CCC is also called America's Green Revolution. Modern environmentalists say that if the world acted with the same spirit today, climate change could indeed be stopped. In other words, a program that ended 90 years ago still holds the key to our future today. When World War II broke out, these same CCC boys joined the new American army. But these were not ordinary soldiers, but these were trained, strong, organized, and responsible young men. As one general said, half of our army was built by the CCC. When they returned after the war, they sowed the seeds of development in their cities. Roads, schools, parks, and their hard work was everywhere. They fought in war and built in peace. In 1942, when the war demanded all their attention, the CCC was closed. But despite its closure, its impact did not end. Those trees still stand, those parks still breathe, and the seeds they planted still provide shade. People often say, "In every tree is their sweat. In every stream is their prayer." The program ended, but its spirit lived on because it was a project of humanity, not of government. Today, when we talk about climate change, deforestation, and youth unemployment, it seems as if history itself is calling us back to the CCC. Many countries around the world are now starting programs, like the Green Corps. Some experts say, the world needs a new CCC, because sometimes the solution to the future lies in the past. Roosevelt's tree army may be over, but its mission still runs through the veins of the earth. The CCC teaches us that change comes not just from money, but from intention. When a nation gives its youth a purpose, it can move mountains. We can revive that same spirit today by starting green projects in schools, universities, and communities. Just think, if every young person plants just 10 trees a year, the world could change in 10 years. This is not a dream, this is a plan. We just have to believe again. Sometimes I think the young people who did all this are no longer here, but the trees they planted are still breathing. Perhaps the air we breathe today carries the scent of their labor. Their hands not only changed the earth, they saved our breath. If you go to a park and see an old tree, stop and think it was probably planted by a CCC boy who smiled amidst hunger, hard work, and hope. The real power of the CCC was not in the trees, but in hope. The dream of a leader and the faith of millions of young people, that was the combination that changed history. This story reminds us that sometimes we don't need big guns to save the world, just shovels and faith. Roosevelt's words still ring true today. When man serves nature, he saves himself. So viewers, the question is, can we too build our own tree army today? Can we do for our cities, our neighborhoods, our country what the CCC did for America? If a generation can rise from unemployment and despair to become protectors of nature, why can't we? Write in the comments. If you had the chance, how would you start your own CCC? Because in the end, the earth belongs to all of us, not to any government. And perhaps the next revolution may also start from a tree seed.